So thanks for joining today. As Chris mentioned, my name is Kim Toomey, and I'm a solutions consultant here with Reltio. And I wanted to give you just a little bit of my background. I began my career in digital marketing and working on audience campaigns. How do we reach the right customers with the right ads, with the right website content? And eventually that led me to the CDP space as an emerging technology a few years ago. So I've worked again with a lot of customers talking about their marketing strategies and how to improve them with CDP. And now I've found myself in the MDM space. So I've just gone deeper and deeper into kind of the data and the big tech behind all of it. So I appreciate community and Reltio allowing me to share my perspective on the space. And I'm glad that we can join today and keep this conversational and ask questions as we go along. A little bit about Reltio. The company was founded in 2011, and as a technology company, really working to deliver that single source of truth of data that's going to enable digital transformation. Some of our customer highlights: we have the privilege to work with great healthcare companies and services, as well as pharmaceutical, top hospitality brands, as well as some of the best global goods companies. And today we're really going to talk about consumer data specifically, and how that comes to play in terms of, do I need to implement a CDP? Should I implement MDM? How do I get to this golden standard of digital transformation? Maybe what does that even mean a little bit? So hopefully we get some of those questions answered for you today. At Reltio specifically, we help our customers to understand their customers better than anyone else, so that you can thrive in this new experience economy and start to reimagine what a delighted customer might look like for your business. But starting with improving customer interactions often leads to even larger data requirements that are going to drive your analytics, larger business decision-making, fulfillment, or product offerings. So to start, I wanted to actually share with you a couple real-world examples that I've seen in companies that are doing just this in a really interesting way to build that customer experience. And the first one I wanted to share with you is this company called Joybird. And I haven't worked with them. This is my own personal experience. And I'm sure, like many people over the last year, I was stuck in my house and decided to tackle some home improvement projects and upgrade some pieces around my house. And the interesting thing about this company, Joybird, is they were built from the ground up as a digital native company trying to really disrupt the furniture industry. So there's not, showrooms that you're going to necessarily. They were all online first. And so when you go to their website, you'll find all kinds of resources beyond just your traditional furniture store, from complimentary design services, all kinds of materials and ideas and content. And so as a customer, I have just a plethora of information at my fingertips and resources. And then, which is great as a customer, but for me personally, as kind of a data and marketing nerd, I always take that a level deeper and say, gosh, like, what is all the data that's required to power these experiences for me? And it's just phenomenal if you start to unwind what I'm seeing in the front end of a website. I have gone through their design services, so they know kind of what my house looks like. They have all of my personal information. And then when I did finally make a purchase, you get this email that's on the far left there, where I can actually follow from the manufacturing and design of my individual piece of furniture with a barcode. Again, so they're integrating that data and that experience from, as soon as I make that purchase into manufacturing, and then into the fulfillment and delivery. So you get this email that's really detailed about when I can schedule a delivery, what to expect. And if I need more help, excuse me, I can call, I can chat, I can text. And again, anybody that's in the data space, I'm sure your heads start to spin about, oh man, look at all these different systems and all these different touch points. And to get one single view as Kim, as a customer, that's a lot of data that's going to drive that actual complete experience for me. And it's a pretty powerful and amazing experience when you think about it. But as a digital native company, they were building with all of these experiences and touch points in mind. When we talk about digital transformation, For larger companies that didn't start out as an online retailer, for example, it's a little bit of a heavier lift. I just came across a really interesting Harvard Business Review article about some of the digital transformation work that IKEA is doing. And hopefully most of us are familiar with IKEA, very different furniture retail model than the last example. But they, exactly like many other businesses, are going through a very significant digital transformation, and not just focused on customers. That is number one, their top priority is how do they revamp everything around customer interaction and new purchasing journeys. But it's really a completely different way of working, making decisions, and managing the company. And so you saw maybe on my first slide, they compare it to an iceberg. When you start with customer data and what you want your customer experience to be, that's really almost the tip of the iceberg. And below the surface is all of that data that's empowering the company to make huge business decisions, whether that's changing the layouts of the store to move from more of a fulfillment center when their online sales have grown 30% in the last 3 years, which is significant for somebody as large as IKEA, right? So I say all of this to kind of help frame some of the conversations that you should be having as an organization if you're in consideration of trying to understand, do I need a CDP? Do I need an MDM solution? What's the best for my business? I think it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, where you are in the business life cycle, and where you want to get to as that kind of guiding North Star. A little bit more textbook definition. Digital transformation is really that integration of technology into all areas of the business. And data is currency in this ecosystem. For years, companies have been told that data is king. You need your web analytics, you need measurable advertising campaigns, you need first-party data and third-party data, and your SDKs and ESPs and all the acronyms, right? And so we had data everywhere. You have data warehouses and data lakes and your reporting tools and dashboards on top of it. And then again, about 7 years ago, we started to see the emergence of a tool called customer data platforms. And these are, generally speaking, cloud-based SaaS solutions. And as technologies have advanced more and more, businesses are looking to the cloud for these solutions. And the ecosystem has gotten a little bit noisy, so it's hard to differentiate from vendor A, from vendor B. And that's, again, really what we're trying to get to the heart of today. And again, customer experience is a mandate in what we're calling now our experience economy. We know that having a solid customer experience delivers great ROI. People are looking to brands and companies to deliver not just, I'm making this one-time purchase, but how does that influence your brand loyalty as well? So getting this whole digital transformation, digital experience right is critically important to businesses. And there's really 3 pillars of digital transformation. And the first, and I think where a lot of CDPs really focus on, is that digital experience. So how is your company creating new digitally influenced products and services? How can we deliver better omni-channel and coordinated experiences to our customers so that it's not disjointed? At the worst, it's disjointed and frustrating, right? At the best, it feels completely seamless and natural if I'm making a purchase from a retailer and need to go pick it up curbside or in store. Those should be very seamless transactions to most customers, and it's what we expect as a customer these days. And we also expect personalization from a lot of companies, and for that to be done accurately and at scale. And that's definitely something that the customer data platforms focus on as well, through a variety of different tactics. But as we go a little bit deeper into this digital transformation topic, we're also talking about digital operations. So that is the adoption of modern platforms, and not just reporting or analytics, but everything from manufacturing or your email service provider that's going to do that final mile delivery of your messaging to customers. You really need technology that's going to support your hopes and dreams for this digital transformation project. Maybe the usage of AI and machine learning. Most definitely, I would argue cloud infrastructure for the scalability and flexibility. And then really you get to this digital innovation, which is where these experiences and operations really intersect. And you're talking really to the C-level for the business and driving really significant business process change that's going to have measurable impacts. And again, if we start unraveling this and looking at the different technologies used to support some of these initiatives, as an MDM solution or master data management, it's really focused primarily on uniformity, accuracy, stewardship, consistency, and accountability of your enterprise-wide data assets. You want to ensure that the data that permeates throughout your entire organization is reliable. If you're making significant business decisions, you have to be able to trust that data. And that's really the core of MDM as a discipline. And Reltio as an MDM solution, of course, is going to support that discipline in a lot of different ways. We, of course, can do it for customer data, but other entity types of data as well. So that's really where MDM starts to grow beyond some of the capabilities that CDP might be really focused on. Conversely, our definition of CDPs here is traditionally a marketing-focused system. They are going to generate that unified customer view. So that's definitely something that you will hear over and over again in the technology spaces. I need that single view of my customer so that I can do X, Y, and Z for them. And CDP can certainly do that. And they're really great at allowing you to segment those users and deliver audience information to those final mile delivery tools, optimizing timing and the targeting of those messaging and offers. It's really a great tool to almost supercharge your marketing efforts as well. Now, customer data platforms, of course, come in different flavors. So not only do we often face ourselves with the business challenge of, do I need to look at MDM? Do I need to look at CDP? But within both of those technology spaces, there's kind of subcategories, right? So in customer data, we see a couple different buckets largely throughout that space. The first is what is considered an infrastructure CDP. And these tend to have almost the most overlap in functionality between an MDM solution, where it's going to be really strong in collecting and aggregating data and building that view of your customer. It's going to have strong identity resolution capabilities. One of the key differences is often the ability to store or activate against what are called anonymous records, or users that have a digital presence or identity like a cookie or a device ID, but you don't know anything else about them. If you're working in a completely digital space, you can still activate, you can still show ads to those customers or personalize the website based on a cookie ID. Whereas that might not be a record that you want to have mastered yet until you know more about that customer. And again, you can also route data from one tool to another. So if you need to share and disseminate and standardize some of your customer data across your marketing systems, this is a strong player in the CDP space for that. Next up, you'll find some of the marketing cloud solutions. So these are generally your big suites that we're all familiar with, where you're kind of just continuing to build within that marketing cloud as part of their integrated marketing suite. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's the path that you have chosen as your business. And then lastly is an omni-channel decision engine. So this is a CDP that's going to have a lot of native machine learning capabilities, allow you to do things like segment customers on different types of behaviors or interactions that you're seeing, and not just the facts that maybe you've collected, as well as having that omni-channel journey mapping capabilities. So you can optimize not just your messaging, but potentially timing and when in a customer journey do you send the next offer to keep somebody engaged?
Hey,
So
Kim,
again, if you're, yeah.
Yeah, so not a question, but an interesting comment is one comment. With IKEA, I survived one of the worst digital experiences, spending 2 beautiful weeks to collect all missing parts of my kitchen from different Paris suburbs. You can't order, you can't buy, I've paid twice for the delivery, etc. And so, you don't have a great digital experience, then, that's an issue, right?
It is an issue, and I can empathize because I was also trying to buy IKEA closet solutions, and they're actually, I empathize with that experience, right? And why I also had other alternatives.
We've all had, bad experiences, but it's not just them. But now keep going. But if there are any specific questions, please let me know and post them in the chat, and we'll get them answered for you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. All right, so of course, if we've got any architects in the room, most of these solutions can work together and work really great side by side as well. And again, when there's that overlap and confusion of, I just need a single view of my customer, and all of these different technologies are telling me that they can do that, where do I go? What do I really need? So again, Reltio here on the left is really built to ingest first-party data from your individual level customers, but it can be enriched with third-party data. It's all a real-time API first driven system. So going back to that modern technologies, these are the things that you really want to look at and look for if you're trying to connect some of these systems together. And of course, the ability to consolidate profiles at a person level and connect different attributes to those identities in a really flexible and scalable way. These are some things that Reltio prides itself on doing well when it comes to customer records. Now, if you pair this with a customer data platform, for example, that's going to handle robust segmentation, really give your marketing team kind of hands-on keyboards ability to create their own audiences, to power their own marketing. It's really kind of a nice hybrid solution where you're doing the heavy lifting of that data cleanse and IT mastering, and then just kind of handing off in a really, again, secure and privileged, but also reliable way to your customer data platform, so that when your marketing team is looking to build campaigns or new initiatives and activate messages to those customers, they have a really significant trust in the data that has come from your MDM solution. So this is really, again, where we see some of the strengths in combining some of these platforms. Because while there is a little bit of overlap, there's enough difference between the two and what your kind of end goals are that they really should be considered a little bit separately. So with that,
Kim,
we're gonna,
quickly,
great.
I won't say their name, but there's not a specific question, but unless they want to speak up. They said this is the path we're heading down. So CX platform, CDP, CCA, CIM, etc., and we have Reltio in the mix. So
great, awesome. Sounds like you're well on your way.
Yeah, it does.
Perfect. So I'm going to go through and just again share with you some of my observations on things that you should consider as you're looking for these technologies. But again, if there's any other questions, this is a great little pausing point. All right, so let's zoom in on some of that what that customer data is, because there are some nuances there, I think, especially depending on who you're talking to within an organization. So first and foremost, customers are people, right? I think we all generally agree on that. I know at Reltio, that is one of our guiding principles. Our customers are people. But technology inherently has multiple different definitions of a person, right? It could be a digital identifier. It could be my cookie. It could be an email address. It could be a device ID, right? Those are what we generally call as digital identities, and they get tricky, right? Because maybe you have household email address that really household shares for different things. Well, that's not really a person, that's a digital identity that you might market to. And then you're going to have some more facts potentially as you go as a business that you might gain about that person, whether it's their address, and now you have at least kind of a physical understanding of where this person might be physically. You might even have, again, unique identifiers. You've done some merging and now you're down to those, the golden record, the unique identifier. And that I think gets most companies 99% of the way there. But it is never essentially a verifiable human. Getting to a verifiable human in technology is a difficult task, I think. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about data and different solutions is how do you as an organization currently define a person, how, what data backs that up and what's most reliable, because that's going to influence some of the other technologies that you need to execute against your business goals. And then what information do you need about that customer? And then what are the implications of getting that wrong? If I receive an email, maybe I've signed up for something with both a work email and a personal email. Is it bad that I get both of them? Not really. But if you're making larger decisions or merge actions on records that maybe should be kept separate, and you're talking, more significant data implications in the healthcare space, for example, those are hot waters you don't want to be in, right? And then privacy, more and more has become such a significant consideration for companies in the last few years. So not only do you have that information, but are you allowed to use it and in which ways? And actually going back to that IKEA article, they've had some interesting facts about the ability to allow their customers to update their profile and preference information, and really opting into some of that privacy consideration, and have found that when people are willing to give you, more and more information, and have shown that you're treating it with privacy and care, that businesses are allowed to then make really much better decisions as well. So it's a little bit of give and take there. I think, and probably a whole other huge topic, but definitely something to consider when you're implementing solutions is not just the privacy of my customers, but who within this organization has access to the data and how can they use it, and do they know, has this customer opted in to receive X, Y, and Z materials? And so to that point, who within your organization needs access to these tools? Kind of typically is how we've seen this shake down. MDM is most likely going to be IT owned and centralized in data teams. And it's going to be a component of MDM that is going to really centralize data to any other team within your organization. It doesn't necessarily have a single end distribution goal. It's really going to disperse throughout the entire organization. And your day-to-day users are going to leverage MDM to improve the data quality, enforce governance, and then ensure that all of the piping and plumbing is there in place to get data to the appropriate teams and systems.
Hey, Kim.
Yeah.
This could be for somebody else, but let's see if you have some thoughts around this particular question. It's on the fly. So this person says, I'd be interested in how the platforms are integrated. Is it a point-to-point, Kafka, et cetera? He knows that it's a higher level topic, but would like to kind of understand a little bit more of your thoughts around that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And when you're architecting, and I have some slides a little bit later, that kind of connection, you have options. And it generally, in my experience, comes down to how real time does that data need to be. So in some cases, you might, again, a lot of these technologies are all API driven. So, you have the ability to do some of that real-time integration. Reltio, for example, also will publish event changes to a Google Pub sub queue. So again, a really real-time event update system that maybe you have your CDP listening to that Pub sub queue, for example, for changes. I think it comes down to what are your requirements in terms of latency and moving data from one tool to another, and then kind of architect from there is what I'd recommend.
Thanks, Kim.
And then conversely, I'm just going to wrap up the slide. CDP is generally a marketing-owned technology. You're going to hand off that solution to, audience managers, maybe even, campaign managers, digital marketing teams, hands-on keyboard, going in the tool. Generally speaking, from my experience, there's not as much kind of data editing, if you will, within a CDP, but you will be able to slice and dice and build segments or audiences against your entire customer base. So that generally your marketing team can't, totally mess up or change anything about the customer record, but they can certainly activate against them. And again, then pass those into that final mile delivery system for execution, whether it's ads, web personalization, are a lot of the common use cases there, or again, email, et cetera. Moving on and kind of thinking through all of these, I think it's really significant to think about what use cases are you trying to empower with your customer data. So MDM, again, it can be a challenge because it's a solution that's looking to disseminate data across multiple organizations within a business. But you do significantly see analytical and operational use cases. And again, Reltio specifically is kind of built from the ground up to facilitate both of those use cases really well through, again, all of the API systems and real-time nature of the technology. But it's also intended to simplify your compliance and data governance and give you a lot of agility in your data models, the ability to add attributes on the fly to your entity records, edit and change or add relationships. And that's going to allow you to, again, quickly adapt to any of those changing business requirements that so many companies felt over this last 18 months or so. CDP, again, you're going to be a lot more focused on looking at ROI metrics from specific campaign metrics. Can I get a better return on ad spend for my ad spend, ad campaigns that I'm running? Can I also acquire more consented first-party data? I mentioned that a lot of CDPs have kind of their own first-party tracking enabled, so you can put a JavaScript tag on a website and set a cookie and start storing web activity against that cookie, for example, so that you could do some remarketing campaigns or on-site personalization. But you also want to really do that so that you can acquire more first-party data, get more persistent identifiers for that particular record. So you're not just trying to live and die by a cookie, which is also a very significant change in the marketplace right now. And then also companies are trying to strive towards that one-to-one personalization through segmentation, which I think is a really interesting challenge that companies are trying to solve with some success in CDPs. And I say that because when you're thinking about what technologies you're implementing really from the ground up in a digital transformation project, personalization at scale becomes really challenging for marketing teams. And like anything in kind of the digital world, we will often start with a crawl, walk, run philosophy. So segmentation is a really great place to start. I can take my pool of customers and break them up into 5 different customer types and put them into different journeys. And that's things that marketers have been doing for years in different tools. It's maybe getting more sophisticated and coordinated now with CDPs. But if you start to extrapolate that, you quickly see where the problems are. It's like, I can't just build 20 more campaigns. I quickly can't just scale up my marketing team or the content that I need to create if I just keep making more and more segments. And so that really brings in this concept of how do I get to one-to-one personalization? And coordinated real-time pipelines of data is really how you do it. And again, this gets as complicated as you want it to be, right? Because now you're thinking of how do I template my email campaigns so that it's all dynamic variables, and I can type in lookups and real-time information on email send so that, you know, Kim is getting a completely different email with different offers than Chris might, right? So when we're talking, again, holistically, these are some of the larger problems that marketing teams are trying to grapple with, and making sure that their technology really supports. Some other considerations that I think are really important as you look at these different technologies are just the data and IT maturity within your organization, people resources, and both your existing and future technology stack. Nobody is doing all of this at once. It's just impossible. You take it bit by bit. So, you know, some things are going to stay, some things are under consideration to be upgraded or changed. And having kind of a North Star to guide you for all of that is really going to help make some of those decisions.
Hey, Kim.
Yeah.
Hopefully I don't distract you too much whenever I ask these questions. But
absolutely.
So one question is the role of third-party data more or less important to MDM and CDP?
Is it more, sorry, more or less important to one of the technologies or the other? Was that the question?
Yeah, is the role of third-party data more or less important to MDM and CDP?
Sure.
If not, you got it, okay.
Yeah, I think so. So third-party data can mean a lot of things, and specifically in marketing, where I've seen it the most is in advertising, right? So that's shared cookies, used to be cross-domain tracking. A lot of that stuff is changing rapidly because of privacy concerns. So I think third-party data will continue to be important, but it's having less significance, particularly in CDP. I think for MDM, you might get some enrichment capabilities out of it. You just, again, have to be careful about how you use it and what you're allowed to know about people. So, you know, I think the general consensus that I've heard in the market right now is that, you know, first party data is obviously the golden standard. Third party is more or less becoming less accurate. And I don't know if you've ever gone to, you know, like some of the bigger ad networks, and you can look up based on your email address or something, all of the different like advertising buckets, demographic information that they have assumed you to be in, but it's often worth a good laugh. So I recommend checking it out sometimes.
Thanks, Kim. I love kind of you just say it.
Yeah. So one of the other questions that I think a lot of companies ask themselves when they're looking at these projects is, what do I do first? Chicken or the egg? MDM, CDP, what do I need in place to begin? And there's no, sorry, spoiler alert, I don't have an answer. There is no right answer. These are, again, the things that I think are important to think about. And so first and foremost, with some of the organizational and data maturity, these are some of the challenges that I've heard. You know, I don't have enough first-party data. Does it make sense for me to have a CDP? My data is siloed across sources, and I don't have a unified view of my customer. I think that's, again, the big challenge a lot of companies are looking to solve here. Again, the data is inconsistent and inaccurate, or I can't access that data in a scalable or efficient way. So if you start to dissect these kind of larger business problems, again, the answer, right, is it depends on what technologies you want to implement first. Generally speaking, if you don't have a lot of data, you know, or a lot of disparate data sources that you're trying to unite, a CDP that's a little bit more lightweight and agile is probably a fine place to start. If you are a massive Fortune 100 organization with a complicated data problem, you probably want to get some of that, you know, IT enabled best practices in place first before you start a separate CDP project for marketing that's then going to have to try to reconfigure or work backwards from marketing to your IT organization. So those are just some of the observations that I've had talking to businesses over the last 5 years or so. But again, something that I would encourage anybody in this situation to really dive deeply into within your org in a very kind of realistic and honest way. Again, talking through kind of system ownership, MDM, I think we all agree, squarely lives in kind of the IT data space, data governance. We're working more with kind of the enterprise architects in terms of how this gets solutioned. But you do have key influencers generally within your reporting and analytics teams. Product, of course, sales and marketing generally has a say in getting their hands on this data as well. And this is generally what we see, especially on the sales side of things and who we are having conversations with. Whereas CDP tends to be really a marketing-driven project. Your day-to-day owners are going to be marketing technologists or audience managers, but they do have significant influence often from somebody in IT or their web development space, potentially reporting and analytics. Because at the end of the day, for CDP to be successful, they need some assistance in usually getting to some of that data and getting it into their own system. So these are, again, just some considerations as you're evaluating different technologies. Again, a day in the life, and here on the left, I'm keeping kind of my MDM thoughts. So, MDM is going to allow you to say, the understanding that I have of my customer is accurate, it's robust, I can get it to any number of systems in real time. If that is the pinnacle goal for the customer data that you have, I would say that's probably best served by MDM. If you have that in place and then are looking at a challenge of, I need to have customer data at my marketing team's fingertips that can easily be grouped into segments, empower experiences, then you're really talking into the CDP space, where they're needing to build, pulling lists, right? They're like, I've heard, from marketing teams, oh, I ask for this information and I have to go through 3 different teams and it takes a week or 2. And by the time I get it, that campaign is no longer relevant. So those are, again, the speed to market pieces that having really modern technologies and systems that have very clearly defined boundaries about what they do or don't do is a really strong way to think about how you want to build these systems together. And then lastly, kind of another consideration is going to be, how do I want to build into my existing ecosystem? So where is my customer data coming from? Where does it need to go? Overall, you want both your MDM and CDP solutions to be compatible with your architecture, meaning open APIs that you can build upon, existing integration frameworks, what do different data models look like, how compatible are they? And I would recommend that you deep dive into how robust some of those pre-configured integrations might be within your CDP vendor. That is a piece that a lot of CDPs really pride themselves on. Is it's simple for a marketer to have these point-to-point solutions between the CDP and their email tools and their ad networks. And you don't need to architect or build kind of those connectors. But the flip side to that, right, is that you are at the hands of what that technology has built for you. So I would just recommend that you really deep dive into what that connection looks like and what you need it to do before you just say, oh, this point-to-point solution is going to work perfectly.
Hey, Kim.
Yeah.
Quick question. So CDP helps to enhance audience engagement, but without proper content, it's difficult to get the attention/engagement. So can CDP help with the content management?
Yeah, great question. Some of them, kind of dabble in that. I wouldn't say you're going to find a lot of overlap in like a content management system and CDP. I think that's again kind of the next step that people are trying to solve for. But I would say there's a lot of also really great and open content management systems that start to play nicely, as well as even like if you're trying to get content in an email template, for example. So there are, yeah, I would say that's the next big piece of this whole puzzle that I don't think has been solved particularly well.
Thanks, Kim.
Yeah. Great. And again, to kind of wrap this up, this is a integration diagram, if you will, of how we start to think about all of these different tools. So again, you'll see some of that third-party data enrichment on the far left with things like Locate, which is what Reltio uses for address cleansing and verification. LiveRamp is a ad network and identity resolution. So that's something that you'll find a lot of integrations with in the CDP space as well. And that's again where you're going to do some enrichment and maybe build upon some of those, again, like a LiveRamp audience, for example, and then distribute it to different ad networks. But again, all of this is so closely tied in with your data lakes and warehouses and reporting at the top there so that you're making great decisions. And then activating in the CDP cloud to, again, that far right-hand side of how do we actually execute against these campaigns? Whereas, CDP kind of goes to the right, and your MDM solution is going to feed a lot more into some of those operational systems as well. But I would say, generally, again, when you're looking at these, you want things to flow potentially bi-directionally really well. So you want to be able to send data into each of these solutions and get back that closed feedback loop from those systems as well is really key when you're looking to architect a solution that's going to work with MDM and CDP and everything else within the ecosystem.
So quick question, Kim. Can you articulate the differences in matching between MDM and CDP? Like when profiles need to be stitched together, unified customer journey type stuff?
Yeah, and I'll give the caveat that a lot of CDPs do, have their own capabilities in matching. So I have one perspective from the CDP where I was at previously, where essentially your match rules could be as simple in a CDP as, if you're basically daisy chaining identifiers together. So if I have email addresses across the same system, I know that's the same person. And I'm definitely oversimplifying here. Whereas in an MDM solution like Reltio, you have multiple match rules and the ability to do things like, yes, this is definitely a match because their full name and email address and physical address are all the same. We can, across different systems, that's one person. But you can also do things like matches that are suspect for review, or layer in even some AI to predict that these two records might be a match, and then have somebody actually come in and manually review those, like a data steward, and kind of make the final call there if those records should be matched. So match and merge is definitely a capability that I have found has much more strength and a robust capability in the MDM solution compared to CDP.
Thanks, Kim. I have another question for you.
Yeah.
They keep coming in. That's good. How do you recommend addressing accuracy and latency issues with account data in MDM? So many times account information is not as accurate as it should be and results in downstream discrepancies. Does it make sense?
I think so. So you're asking, if you need to do more work kind of on your data quality in MDM because it's having a negative impact on the downstream.
Yeah,
right?
Right? Yeah, yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, great question. And the root of it is probably even a system or two back, right? So there was discrepancies or errors in some of that initial source system data. Now we have it in MDM, but it's still causing errors or counts. I think that's probably worth a deep dive in some of that standardization, looking at where those errors or differences might be. Some of that analysis is probably best handled in like your like a BigQuery or Snowflake or some analytical type warehouse to do some of that analysis, and then kind of work backwards from there and figure out, what are the patterns of the challenges that I'm seeing, and how can I, potentially bulk update some of that or find efficiencies to get that more closely aligned. Is what I would recommend.
Thanks, Kim. And then it looks like Usman has a question. Did you want to take yourself off mute and ask? No? Okay. I do have one other question, Kim.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can read this right. Kartik, you might, let me try it. So what data we use from Experian for data enrichment? So I guess they're using data from Experian and want to know what to use for data enrichment.
Yeah, great question. Experian is not a tool that I am the most familiar with, honestly. So again, and what you see here on kind of the left hand of the screen is generally the way it works is if you currently have a relationship with Experian data, you could bring it into Reltio for enrichment. So if it's something you're using, great. If it's not of interest to your business, it's just an option.
Yeah, and Kartik, if you have additional thoughts, some of these questions can be posted on the community to get additional insights from the entire community and other Reltians. So if it didn't completely answer your question, feel free to add, and that goes for everybody else. So I'm going to give Usman one more time. Did you have a question or no? You can take yourself off mute if so. No? Okay, go ahead, Kim. Thank you.
All right, excellent. You're just doing perfectly on time. All right. So again, just a couple more slides that looking a little bit about some of the differences. And this presentation, Chris, will be posted to community afterwards. So if you always want to come back and deep dive into some of the eye charts here, you're more than welcome to. But this is where, again, we've as Reltio have key differentiators that you don't typically find in CDP, and why we think they're such complementary solutions. Multi-domain. So if you're not familiar with that term, which marketers and CDP may not be, it's that you have the ability to not just master customer records, but anything else as well. So that could be, again, accounts if you're in the B2B space, physical locations if you're a retailer, employees, products, etc. So you can get a lot more and different types of data into MDM, whereas CDP is generally 100% customer focused. That also becomes really important if you're looking to understand different relationships between, what stores, what physical locations is this customer most likely to go pick up their order from? How might that impact, again, do I need to open another store? Do I need to close this one, change it? What's going on? Those are larger business problems that MDM is going to be best to kind of piece some of that together for. It's going to be, again, that source of truth for your enterprise-wide operations and analytics, and give context to your customers, not just within marketing, but really customers for sales and finance, suppliers. Your call center is also a huge opportunity to get data into an MDM and back into call center information so that customers can have that great experience. And then very agile. So again, very real-time, flexible data models, API architectures that are going to allow you to send that data into any operational system, whether it's a kiosk in a subway or mobile app. All of that kind of wiring can certainly be powered by Reltio as well. So with that, again, you're going to get a customer record that's highly compliant and accurate. You're going to have things like persistent unique identifiers, which really come in handy. We talked a little bit about matching and merging in CDP. If you've already done that work within your MDM and feel that it's a reliable customer record, then you can just send your CDP the unique identifier for that person out of Reltio, and you don't have to worry about how your CDP is going to do significant matching and merging because you've taken care of that piece of the puzzle here. And you can continually, what we call progressively stitch updates in both something like Reltio and a CDP, which means once I have this record form, I can add to it, I can add attributes, I can, as this customer makes the next purchase, opens the next email, I can store all of those events and interactions as I need to, either both in MDM or CDP. So that progressive stitching phase is something that you should hear out of both of these technologies, but it allows it to work really well together because there are some things that, I should say, some events or activities that you may not want to master on a customer record, but might be helpful in your CDP. So for example, every time I open an email, that tells the business something about me as a customer, that I'm engaged, I'm reading, I might not be ready to buy. But again, if you're looking at a solution that has a lot of native artificial intelligence or data science to it, that's going to result in some sort of identification of me as a customer that's engaged with that type of content. But you don't really need to master that data. For example, I don't need to store the thousands of emails that I've ever opened in a record in MDM. So those are the types of differences in the data and the events that maybe don't need to be mastered, but might live better in something like CDP, as well as your data warehouse, for example. And then again, in CDP, that's a really great place to store what we call those thin anonymous records, and then leverage CDP leverage MDM as a source when what we call like a merge activity happens. So I have a cookie ID, and now I've made a purchase, and I've given you my name and my email address, and now I'm a record that should be considered more robust and potentially mastered. And maybe that cookie ID is stored there as well, but it can live both places. So you have this really deep understanding of where all of my interactions are taking place across your different systems. So with that, thank you for listening. That's a little bit of my perspective on the industry, and I'm going to leave you here with some more information about Reltio. I know you're all familiar with the community, so please feel free to leave comments there, but we can also open it up for questions.
Yeah, and as maybe a question or two comes in, I posted in the chat just where you can go to the other community webinars. Also, feel free to ask your questions on the community, where you can also connect to peers. We are looking for speakers, so if anyone wants to volunteer, and then lastly, please put your comments in, to tell us how this went and maybe some other things that you want to hear and see. But I love comments, especially on what we can do better, what went well, and all of those things. So, but other than that, I don't have any other questions, Kim. So I'll be here for the next minute or two. But thank you everyone for coming. I actually learned a ton. I'm not the expert in either one of those, and so this was super helpful. And just a quick background or a quick thought is I remember Kim, I think, came here about 4 or 5 months ago, maybe less, and she was the CDP expert, now MDM, and I kept hearing these things about, what's the difference between the two, and it's like, we have an expert here, let's get her on the phone. So hopefully this was helpful to everyone. The goal is for you to get value out of these, and also to go a little bit deeper into the MDM space and into the Reltio product. So thank you. And somebody said this was really great. And then another person said, hey, thanks so much, Kim and Chris, really insightful and helpful. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for organizing.
Of course. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop here and know that these will be recorded and posted to the community. So check out the community next week. So thank you, everyone, for coming. Really appreciate it. Yes, great, Kim. I really
Oh, sorry, cut out there for me for a second.
Oh, no worries. It's great. This is I learned a lot from it, so it's pretty
Thank
cool.
you.
I think
Great.
some others did as well. So, all right. Well, I'm gonna hang it up, and then we'll go from there. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.